The war on terrorism, crisis in Iraq, Bosnia, Somalia, whenever and wherever the United States military is deployed, the men and women of the 157th Air Refueling Wing, New Hampshire Air National Guard, almost always play an important role, and there's a simple reason for this. The unit's 9 KC-135R Stratotanker aircraft and their air refueling mission.
The 157th moved to Pease Air Force Base in October 1975. We started working with the 509th as far as being the refueling unit moving airplanes across the North Atlantic. And when Pease Air Force Base closed in 1990, we became the prime unit to be in the right place, right location to refuel any kind of fighter airplanes or airlifters going over the North Atlantic or coming back.
Pease did not really close. What happened was it downsized. From an active duty base with a guard unit on it, it's now been transitioned into an international trade port with a guard unit on it. And that guard unit has picked up a lot of the mission that the overall Strategic Air Command had.
During times of international crisis, the 157th refueling mission most frequently takes 2 or more KC-135R aircraft to bases in Germany, Spain, Saudi Arabia, and eastern Turkey. At home, the 157th's part in the Northeast Tanker Task Force helps form an air bridge over the North Atlantic. This is a vital link to transports and F-16 fighter jets, which need refueling every 300 miles. The 157th assumed this key mission in 1993.
The thing that put it over the top was that there were 70 Air National Guard tankers within the Northeast, and there were no active duty tankers. And we had the best capability to plan and execute the mission, and that's how we got it.
But the mission of the 157th Air Refueling Wing extends beyond aerial refueling and could never be accomplished without the dedicated commitment of its citizen soldier members. To understand this kind of sacrifice, one need only look at the dark days and weeks following September 11th, 2001.
We had our kickoff on September 11th in 2001, and that was quite amazing because we were able to see the New Hampshire Air National Guard, the people working, first of all, at helping their community, because it started at our breakfast started at 7:30 in the morning, and it ended at 8:45, just as the planes were beginning to hit. And we watched as the Guard, very professionally, were able to get thousands of people off the base in a very professional and efficient manner, and then go about the business of what you're there for.
We were receiving phone calls from guardsmen saying, do you need me? When do you want me to report? Some guardsmen were not giving us the choice. They started saying, I'm coming in. And it's kind of amazing how people who were doing civilian work suddenly and almost spontaneously became guardsmen.
Soon after that, we were tasked about to go overseas and to stay at home for Operation Noble Eagle. And up to 250, 300 unit members got mobilized, taken away from the civilian jobs, leave their families and go perform that duty.
The dynamic of supporting an operation here called Noble Eagle and flying 24/7 combat air patrols over major cities in the United States, coupled with the deployment requirements of this unit, put some challenges on this unit that in my time in the New Hampshire Air National Guard we have never experienced.
I was talking to them at 1 o'clock in the morning and telling them they had to report by 8 o'clock that morning for a 10 o'clock takeoff, and off they went. And I couldn't tell them for how long because I didn't know. I mean, if you think about the Minuteman concept, there it is. These folks had to be ready right then.
From that point forward, September 11th until the present time, the unit has flown 450 plus missions in support of Operation Noble Eagle, primarily CAP missions around major U.S. cities or strategic installations.
The greatest challenge the aircrews faced supporting Operation Noble Eagle came down to crew fatigue. They were flying missions at all hours of the night with sortie durations that sometimes were close to 10 hours in length.
We had folks that went to Spain, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, right into Afghanistan. Shift gears, the second piece of that, Noble Eagle, we had folks deployed in the United States, going to places like Scott Air Force Base, Andrews Air Force Base, down to Florida.
The history of the New Hampshire Air National Guard begins with the 133rd Fighter Squadron, which won federal recognition on April 14, 1947. Based at Manchester's Grenier Field, the New Hampshire Air National Guard would soon find itself involved in every important mission operation of that era.
The Air National Guard was born out of the end of World War II, same time the United States Air Force was born, and it has had a tradition since its founding of very dedicated citizens in New Hampshire supporting the mission here.
The guy called me up at 3 o'clock in the morning and he says, hey, he says, the North Koreans walked south. And I says, well, where's North Korea? They called us to active duty in the spring of 1951, I guess it was. There were quite a few officers who went to Korea that were pilots that got to fly in Korea. In 1960, we changed from fighters to transports. And that was a little different because when they said we're going into transports, and I said, what kind? And they said C-97s. And I said, what is a C-97? I had never seen one before.
Well, when the 157th was participating in Vietnam, they were flying C-124s, which for that era was like the C-5, the biggest cargo hauling jet, even though it wasn't a jet, it was a prop, in the Air Force at the time. And the men and women of the 157th, although they were not forward deployed, they operated from Pease. They were taking trips from the United States all the way to Southeast Asia and back.
The total round-trip flight from Manchester to Saigon or Tuiwa or Cameron Bay was 100 hours of flying.
C-124 Globemaster, also known as Old Shaky. It was the only aircraft in the Air Force inventory that could carry oversized loads like tanks.
When we changed out of the 124s into the C-130s, our overseas dropped because the C-130A didn't have enough fuel to go on long flights.
Quite a plane. It's nothing like the C-130s that exist today. This was the A model and the B models, which were a lot of fun to fly.
I was a young pilot at the time, and I thought the C-130 was about as much fun as you could possibly have without being assigned to fighter-type aircraft. We were going in and out of short fields, dropping paratroopers, assault landings.
Kept that plane until 1975 when we converted to the tankers we have now, the KC-135 under the Strategic Air Command.
We were the second unit in the Air National Guard to convert to the KC-135 mission, which would be part of the Strategic Air Command. At the time, the Strategic Air Command was so important to the United States, they did not have any reserve component factors in it. It was a total active duty mission.
Non-stop maximum in-flight range of the KC-135R model is right around 10,000 miles. That equates to about halfway around the globe.
It proved to be the perfect airplane for the National Guard. Very global in nature, gave the unit opportunities to participate all over the world, and the tanker mission is just incredible because it refuels just about every airplane in the inventory and increases the capacity of those airplanes by multipliers, sometimes of 2 and 3 times.
The tanker is capable of offloading at a rate of 6,000 pounds per minute, which is right around 1,000 gallons of fuel per minute.
The 157th Air Refueling Group developed a reputation for flying excellence. Among many awards the 157th has won are 2 Spatz trophies as the Air National Guard's top flying unit. In June of 2000, competing against 20 active-duty tanker teams, the 157th captured the General John C. Mayer Trophy as Air Mobility Command's best aerial refueling team.
I think almost every tanker unit, KC-10 to 135, had somebody there. I think we were the only Guard tanker that was there. The combined effort of both of those allowed us to not once but twice hit the refueling point exactly on time and make a contact exactly almost to the second, almost exactly over the point within, I think 25 feet was the closest we got. I think 75 feet of the actual point in space was the other one, and which is pretty outstanding when you're talking about flying at speeds of 200-300 miles an hour. 1
year later, the 157th was named the top Air National Guard unit in the 21st Air Force, the 157th gaining command. The 157th won the same award again in 2002. But all this history almost never happened. In the post-Vietnam era, the world was changing. the very existence of peace was threatened.
Another very historic event was taking place at that time. The Russian bear wasn't so bearish anymore. And I can remember just after the announcements for the base closure, we actually came off SAC alert.
In 1988, the local citizens were assured that Pease was not going to be on the first round of base closures of that era. And lo and behold, 2 days after Christmas, 1988, the announcement was made in Washington and Pease was on the list. And we quickly found not only were we on the list, we were going to be the first unit to close.
Our challenge was to keep up the capability of the base for the Strategic Air Command of the United States Air Force. At the same time, we were trying to close it.
The base closure law said that the Air National Guard could stay here if local officials elected to operate an airport. And it wasn't until the summer of 1989 that the decision was made that there would be an airport here and that the Guard would stay.
And establishing the priorities of what to keep open, what to close down, what facilities really needed to be part of the war effort and what did not.
With base closure, the beauty of that is we were able to bring all that capability into the Guard as a standalone operation. We were able to develop our services capability to operate a dining hall, bring on our security forces. And so we relied on ourselves to provide the mission capability we needed to provide on behalf of the wing.
I believe it was the evening of August 6th, 1990, when we received calls and asking us to come in and start generating our aircraft.
President Bush was here in August, just after the invasion of Kuwait, and he was having a meeting with people from the Middle East. The King of Jordan was here, a sheikh from Saudi Arabia was here. At the same time, we were launching 18 tankers to support a refueling operation bringing our F-4Cs overseas.
But as the buildup became more evident and the requirements to move people and equipment over to the theater became a higher priority, we ended up eventually moving to a 24/7 operation. And again, we were trying to do that, much as has been our history, through volunteerism, because the unit had not been mobilized. And that was probably the biggest challenge, was how to run 24-hour operations 7 days a week on a volunteer status. When we were first told the volunteers that were going, and we were all volunteers, and we were told we're going to base X. Obviously, we couldn't tell anybody where we were going. And when the media people came in prior to our leaving to do a press conference, and at that time we weren't even allowed to give our names. We could only give your first name, so you were Sergeant Joe or Lieutenant John or whatever it may be.
Just 21 months after Desert Storm in December 1992, the unit was asked to take the lead at Morón Air Base, Spain, where a tanker task force of Guard, Reserve, and active tanker aircraft was to be formed. The task force mission was to refuel hundreds of aircraft bound for Somalia as a key part of Operation Restore Hope, a massive humanitarian relief mission.
And within 36 hours when I landed here, we got the staff together and we put together a tanker task force operation at Morón, Spain, that took into account 3 units of the National Guard. And originally it started with 12 jets and about, maybe 300 to 400 people from the different units. And our job was to get to Spain as soon as possible, set up a tanker task force, meaning getting our airplanes ready to fly, and accept C-5s and 141 jets that would be coming from the United States with supplies for Somalia. We got there in Spain and set up, and within 12 hours, all of our jets were in commission, our staff was bedded down, and we were fully operational. That operation grew from 12 jets and about 300 people. At its peak, we had 25 jets, 750 people. We had active duty people, Guard people, Reserve people, people assigned to USAFE, all working together for a common goal.
During the last 10 years, in addition to Operation Enduring Freedom, The 157th has seen itself chiefly involved with regular rotations to Europe and Asia to support no-fly zones over Bosnia and northern Iraq, and most recently in Operation Iraqi Freedom.
We've offloaded 26 million pounds of fuel just for Operation Iraqi Freedom missions.
I would estimate that the majority of both the airlift assets and fighter assets that played in that theater of operation were in some way refueled by this specific air bridge operation. One
of the most significant of the missions that we flew was a C-17 that was repatriating POWs from Germany, Ramstein Air Force Base, Germany, back to the United States. So it was remarkable that the 157th was the first Americans, we were the first Americans to see the POWs on American airspace or on American soil, so to speak.
At home, the Air Guard has become a valuable community resource in times of natural disaster. The 157th's civil engineers helped rebuild Stratham Hill Park after a 1991 microburst leveled the pavilion there. In January 1998, following one of the worst ice storms in New England history, the 157th Civil Engineers went to Guilford, New Hampshire, armed with chainsaws.
That was just plain scary. Operating chainsaws is inherently dangerous, and when you can't even stand up, you're walking on sheer ice, trying to take down these trees that either leaning into the wires or trees that have snapped and are on structures or whatever, and trying to clean up that. It was, I was very thankful at the end of the weekend that nobody had, that particular weekend, had gotten hurt.
In 1997, the New Hampshire Air National Guard celebrated 50 years of distinguished service. The 157th continues to modernize and improve its facilities at Pease Air National Guard Base. In an age of terrorist threat, in addition to nuclear, biological, chemical, and cyber threats, the unit maintains a proactive training posture.
Where will we go from here? Do I think that our base is a viable base, strategically located base? Absolutely.
As a result of that, we're able to be force providers and force multipliers to Air Mobility Command.
We've just won the Air Force Outstanding Unit Award for the second time in a row, and the quality and caliber of people here at the unit is fantastic.
It basically comes down to the people. It's like we are a family.
I'm not sure if we've heard of the greatest generation, which is the generation before me, and how they responded. These people still exist, they're still around, they're everywhere, and a lot of them joined the Guard.